Alright, this is called Babies Without a Social Security Number. This is it's a document I ran across. I've got a large collection of legal and lawful documents and informational articles that you won't find really anywhere. So, I'm trying to share some of the stuff. Babies without Social Security numbers, without birth certificate certifications, making the decision. This essay is the result of an encouragement by my dad, who was to some degree responsible for the status of my daughter, now over 2 years old. In conversations with my father since the birth of my daughter, he thought it might be beneficial to others to share my hospital experience with those who may be wondering about such matters. Having been talked into sharing my experience, I take up pen, now computer, to share those thoughts that led up to birthing a baby girl who holds no social security number, nor any county government issued birth certificate, and to share the events within the hospital in refusing the allowance of these government identifications. The decision to do this, although easy in the end, was somewhat of a torturous path to travel. I have two children, a boy of several years and now a daughter. Even before my son was born, my father had spoken with me about various topics dealing with the devious nature of government. Although at that time I was in my early 20s and believed, as I thought most Americans believed, that our government was a champion of the underdog, the oppressed, and those in need, I did not feel that our government would intentionally take advantage of our fellow countrymen. When my father talked with me about the transgressions of our government at Ruby Ridge and at Waco, Texas, I could not help but think that he had taken a walk off the map. Our government would not murder innocent people, especially children, as he was saying took place at Waco. It definitely did. I did not think he was intentionally lying. Dad does not lie, but I did think that he was wholly mistaken. In my mind, I'd rationalized that our government had some justified reason to go after these people, even if that reason wasn't readily apparent. My father, despite my beliefs, kept the conversation alive from time to time, sharing information and showing me things he had discovered about the actions and cover up in which the government agents and officials were involved, apparently to maintain the status quo within society. Examining for myself the evidence that my dad presented to me for my review caused a shift in my perception about our government. This was evidence, not conjecture, and not the opinion of my father. It was being collected and presented by many rational people, some of them within the law enforcement community. Whether or not it is intentional, the lack of education in our public school system taught me well to believe in the goodness and humanity of our government. The dilemma in which I was caught was a knowledge that, one, my father would not intentionally mislead me, two, that my father is not a stupid man who is easily swayed either by self-serving patriots nor by government, three, that my father and my government were in direct conflict on a number of critical matters, and four, if my father was sufficiently concerned to keep bringing up government actions, it was time for me to conduct my own independent investigation, primarily to solidify in my own mind which story to believe. The difference between what I wanted to believe and the evidence being presented to me could not coexist in my mind. In determining the actual truth, I could lay to rest the conflict occurring in my mind and maybe make my dad eat crow. And so I began doing some research of my own into some of the premises Dad had been putting forth. Premises that went far and beyond the events of Ruby Ridge and Waco, Texas. I read books, surfed the internet, investigated our country's founding documents, examined the interpretation of our founding documents and court decisions, paying special attention to the burdens of citizenship of both the state citizen and the United States citizen. I must admit that as I began this trek, I was not even aware that there was a clear difference between citizens of a state and citizens of the United States. However, I was to learn that as as put forth in the slaughterhouse cases, a Supreme Court decision, Americans do not necessarily hold both citizenship classes, and there is considerable difference between the burdens of each. I examined old history and law books and compared them to current ones. To my surprise, Dad had been correct in each and every assertion he had made. The commercial burdens of the United States citizens were the means by which corporate government was taking the earnings and property from this class of citizenship. Yet it is not the purpose of this document to explain those matters in detail, only to provide sufficient background that the reader will understand my decision of citizenship for my daughter. After engaging in considerable reading and research, I came to understand that those of us holding a social security number, driver's license, county-issued birth certificate, marriage license, or any other permit or license were being duped by our government, duped into entering into a contract which we have no obligation to enter, a contract which gives corporate government power and control over our lives. We are being tricked into believing we are free people when we are anything but free. All of the above mentioned documents bind us to a jurisdiction that is expanded beyond its constitutionally granted 10-mile square allotment in order to Washington, D.C., supposed to be 10 square miles, in order to enslave the American people and hold us as surety for the national debt. The research provided a realization that the county-issued birth certificate and federal Social Security number were a contractual means for the government to make living souls into corporate entities, what we call legal fiction, dead fictitious entities. In order to gain control of our lives and property, these contractual obligations make us subject to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States and Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, of which almost all of our current law is based on democracy over republic. Taking note that there is a difference between these United States, this refers to the sovereign states of the republic that joined together to form a union, and the United States, a corporation created by an act of Congress, 16 United States Statutes at Large 419, 41st Congress, Session 3, Chapter 62, 1871. This act created a corporate United States, a completely separate entity from the Republic of these United States of America. In short, it forms a means by which the American people may be tricked. And believe me, I understand more than you know the reaction you may have to such statements. I had them when my father was sharing this information with me. As I have previously stated, I did not believe it possible for our grand and great government to be capable of such devious actions. It was very hard for me to fathom so many government officials, military personnel to some extent, and police officers to some extent, were either being bought off through employment and benefits, they're just slaves, guys, or intimidated, frightened so badly they would sell out their own people as well as their own children and families. A lot of them are ignorant too, except at the high levels. I believed in the checks and balances put in place by our founding fathers, designed into our government structure in a way that would never allow for such mass deceit of the people, or so I thought. Although it was my father who was the catalyst for research, it was the research itself that brought me to understanding and then to feel at least some responsibility for the ignorance of others in my life. How could I, or for that matter, how could anyone turn their backs from the truth of what is occurring right now in our country? While in the beginning I thought there was probably only a 10% chance my father was correct, I learned he was 100% correct, and knowing this would not allow me to continue as I always had, believing that government would do the honorable thing, I could no longer take that chance with those I love. My father had apologized to me and my brother, stating that if he knew as a young man what he knows now, neither of us would have had government-issued birth certificates nor social security numbers. Now, as a parent with knowledge and understanding, it is my turn to step up to the plate. Thus, the decision to birth my daughter without acquiring a government-issued birth certification or social security numbers was an easy one, even when my choice was based upon the partial and incomplete facts that were available to me at the time I made this decision. In my heart and mind, there really just wasn't any other choice because I wanted my daughter to enjoy the freedom that so many Americans died to provide at the beginning of our country, to enjoy a freedom that has been lost through ignorance by so many Americans. I did not want to sell my daughter into slavery just to save a few dollars on my income taxes. I realize that these statements may be inflammatory to some, but I feel confident that if you do your homework and research in this matter, you will change your perspective and agree that I have made the best possible decision on behalf of my daughter. Unfortunately, I had not been as well informed when my son was born. Oh, I had the opportunity to be informed. I chose not to be informed, not to believe. As I once read, the mark of a stupid man is not that he does not know, it is that he chooses not to know. As such, I will be changing my son's status as soon as possible, given what I know now. My husband and I will avoid asking the government for any kind of assistance, be it medical, income, retirement, or housing. These are the ways that government benefits and privileges. These are the way the government traps individuals in the claws of its corporate jurisdiction by getting you to contract with them. Government engineers the crisis and then provides a mediocre solution, problem, reaction, solution. If you'll just contract with them and give them jurisdiction over your life, my children will learn to be responsible for themselves, and if they need help, to lean on those who truly care about them rather than depend on the government to take care of them. The government is not the parent nor part of the family and should not be responsible for me or my children. It is not right for me or my children to expect other hardworking people trying to raise their family to support mine. A lesson learned from my father. Determining the consequences now that the decision has been made to avoid contracting with the government on my daughter's behalf, I needed to check in aspects of her life that will be of immediate concern upon her birth. Both of my children would be taking advantage of public education. I had to check with the school to find out if a social security number was required for enrollment in the school. It was not. I also checked to see if the hospital birth certificate was adequate documentation to enroll a child in a school, and I found that the hospital issued birth certificate is adequate documentation for the school. That's the county call for the county certificate of live birth, I believe. I could be wrong on that. The hospital and birthday never allow the use of the term birth date, After determining this, I was ready to proceed with my plans concerning my daughter's citizenship status. After having a baby, it is standard policy for hospital staff to bring in paperwork to be filled out and be completed by the parents to get the newborn a social security number. I simply refused to fill it out or sign anything to do with social security, being polite but firm. The person in charge of getting paperwork filled out and turned in did not attempt to pressure me by stating that when grown, my daughter will not be able to work or conduct any personal business without that number. I politely responded that she was misinformed, that I was certain that my daughter needed no permission from the government to carry out the things she will do in her life. In one last attempt on the Social Security number, I was told that a Social Security card would be much more difficult to obtain later. I informed her that didn't matter to me, and she went on to the next thing, the birth certificate. Again, I refused to sign or authorize anything to do with a government record. This lady and I went through a similar discussion as with the Social Security number. She told me that I would have difficulty proving my child's identity enrolling her in school. I informed her that I checked into that matter and that neither a Social Security number or a county birth certificate, I misspoke earlier. It's done at the hospital level, which I've got for my daughters from the birth center, and if is required to enroll in school. If necessary, I could sign an affidavit as to my daughter's identity and status until she was old enough to sign one of her own. With this, the lady folded and indicated that she didn't want to argue with me. The important thing to realize here is that both of these documents are contracts which create a disability, liability, or obligation duties and obligations upon your child, not to put too fine a point in it, but these contracts with the government lack full disclosure and or equal consideration. The government contracts require meeting of the minds. Otherwise, they're null and void. Necessary elements to a legally binding agreement. Additionally, they are accomplished under fraud and deception by virtue of the lack of full disclosure. Once again, you cannot have meeting of the minds when you only give partial truths. These contractual obligations, if entered into, give the government control of your child, making the government the parent and you the babysitter. Parents patria, the pair that rents. In short, this is the legal process. 1. The birth certification is registered with the Bureau of Vital Statistics. 2. Whenever you register, not record anything in any public registry. Register means register, means to rule. To rule. Stir is like star, which is divine, to basically rule the divine being, which is us. Whenever you register, not record anything, the births used to be recorded in Bibles, and they were recorded, not registered. I've got one with birth records in it. Anything in the public registry, you have placed the object identified, in this case your child, into international commerce and transferred legal title to the government, retaining only equitable title to yourself. I believe it's dewa dewa, which is the unification of equitable and legal title, called full title. You may use the registered item, but it's not your property. You have transferred it to the government. Thus, when you register your children, as is done with the issuance of a birth certification, you have given the government legal title, retaining equitable title to yourself. This is why the government may now take the children and place them wherever they wish. They are protecting their legal property. You got to take care of your slaves, guys. Check it out for yourself. Mary's book is a good place to begin. Available at http mhkehn I don't know if it's still there. The benefits. The end of my hospital stay, I walked out with a citizen of the Republic of California instead of a United States citizen. As an individual outside corporate jurisdiction, she will have no taxable income. This benefit being reserved for those citizens inside corporate jurisdiction. She will not pay Social Security, another benefit for those citizens inside a corporate jurisdiction. She will not have a driver's license nor vehicle registration for her car, both are requirements for those under corporate commercial jurisdiction. As such, they do not apply to her. We're talking here about a de jure republic and a de facto corporation. They sound the same, but they're not, kind of like the legal name. She will be completely and totally responsible for herself. The first requirement of freedom: no Social Security, no disability compensation, no workman's compensation, etc. It does not mean that she cannot have these benefits. It just means that she will have to purchase them privately, but not from government. As her parents, we cannot claim her on our income taxes. This is because government has no responsibility for her. As such, they cannot claim a need for collection or deduction on her behalf. As stated, she is outside the control and jurisdiction of corporate government. It is important to note here that she is not outside the law of the Republic, but she has no connection contractual nexus to corporate commercial law of the corporate United States. Statutes do not apply. She is not in that jurisdiction. Statutes and acts apply to corporate bodies only. Obviously, there is much I will need to teach her in order to prepare her to protect the freedom and status of citizenship she will enjoy. But after all, is that not what parenting is all about? It will be a long road, and I suspect it will require my husband and I to keep up with the changes government may institute to trap the ignorant and unwary. There's a quote from an author that I admire that is very applicable here. Freedom is easily lost. All it takes is willful indifference. Terry Goodkind. For myself, I've determined that I am not going to be one of the willfully indifferent Americans that watch freedom slip away just because of the changes taking place do not seem to affect the everyday affairs of my life. I am wise enough to understand that although it is not my ox that is gored today, if I allow my neighbor's ox to be gored, it is only a matter of time until it's mine. In a free society, all we have to protect us from the power of corrupt government is each other. The noose is tightening around our necks, and because of our own ignorance and our own indifference, our rights have been usurped because there is an entity out there that is willing to wait the amount of time it takes for those who know of the dangers of a strong central government to forget or give up or disappear through age and death, ignorance and apathy. I think that there has been a general lack of concern by most Americans that exists because of the general belief that those who founded America had finally put something in place to protect those who would come after. Except you got to keep up with it. Unfortunately, I think we have become much too complacent, apathy. I know that I was for a while. We have lost our ability to see what absolute power is and what it looks like. It is patient, sneaky, devious, and evil foe, and it waits for the moment when there is no true citizens of the republic left for our Constitution to protect, at which time the Constitution dies for lack of representation. My daughter is one of those who stands in the way of that occurring because she is a true citizen of the Republic of the United States of America. I have opened my private life and shared this information with you for whatever value it may have. For now, I wish to remain anonymous simply because I do not trust the government. Citizens like my daughter represent the greatest threat to the total takeover of our country and our lives, that in remembering Waco, I do not wish to place her and us as a family at undue risk. What a legend.